everyone. Oh, I like someone to say hello, Mike. Does anyone know? Hello. Everyone can say hello, Mike, because that's good. That makes me feel like a big man. Hello, everyone. Hello. Marvellous. Look at that. Okay, welcome to Liverpool Skeptics in the Pub. The event this evening is organised by the Merseyside Skeptics Society. We are a non-profit organisation dedicated to the promotion of scientific skepticism, science, reason and critical thinking, which is quite fantastic. Who's here for the first time? Oh, a few people here for the first time. Who's been here before? Lots of people have been here before. Fantastic. A nice, good, solid core of regulars is exactly what we're after. So, here we are. Yes, we've got, we have a regular events. We're in here on the third Thursday of every month. Starting at 8 o'clock, notionally, we're a little bit late. And that's in here from 8 o'clock, where we have a lecture, we have someone comes down and talks to us about something interesting, something we think is interesting, and hopefully you guys will think it's interesting too, and then turn up and watch, which is kind of the idea. And on the first Thursday of every month, we have a social event, which is also in here, which is a little bit more intimate, where we just all get together and have a good time. We get to have a drink, we get to know each other. It's about all the moving and shaking happening. So if you want to get involved in Merseyside Skeptics in any kind of way, that's the place to do it. Turn up at the social events, that's where you can get involved. And here we all kind of have professional hats on. Certainly, I'm half to it. So, we're going to have about 45-minute kind of talk. There'll be a little bit of an interval, then there'll be questions and answers afterwards. Yeah. That's it. So, without further ado, please, massive round of applause for our speaker this evening, Richard Peppiatt.
Thank you very much. I didn't expect to see so many skeptics here, it being the launch night of Big Brother and all. I thought you might have stayed at home, but that will be the first and the last joke, by the way. So, now, I'll briefly introduce myself. I'll vaguely assume that many of you have read my letter. Is anyone aware of my letter? Maybe that's why you're here, yes? No? Yes? Okay. Basically, I used to be a reporter for the Daily Star newspaper until March this year, when I quit in an open resignation letter to the Guardian newspaper. That's got me in lots of trouble, but was also very enjoyable. And since then, I've been doing things like this, doing lectures and talks about my time as a tabloid journalist. I haven't always wanted to be a tabloid. I didn't always want to be a tabloid journalist. I left university, having studied philosophy and literature, and wanted to keep writing, and for some reason decided that becoming a hack would be a good way to keep that up, and that was rather ill-informed of me. But yes, so I started out and managed to land a job at the Mail on Sunday, which was my first ever journalism job, and I was instantly out of my depth, but I lasted a few months, and I went off to an agency in which I worked for various tabloids until the Daily Star offered me a job, a full-time role, and it was on good money, and I thought, it's not my politics. I don't really, like the Daily Star particularly, but, hey, I need the money. So I took it. And I suppose, being a journalist, you kind of think to yourself, you have to be detached. You can't just sit around writing what you want to write for the newspaper you want to write for. There are people who get to write columns, but they have to spend absolute years at the coalface working their way to writing their own opinions. So in my head, I thought, hey, maybe this is a good start for me. Maybe I'll work my way from the Daily Star onto a broadsheet or such. And so I started. So that was about 2.5 years ago now. I quickly became quite aware. I wasn't unaware at the time that the Daily Star is quite a right-wing tabloid. I was aware of this fact, but what I wasn't quite aware of was just how much they were prepared to twist the truth in order to fit a certain agenda. And after 2 years there, I sort of plucked up the courage to to do something about it, because I felt that they were beginning to really sort of back the English Defence League in quite a overt way, and they were fabricating stories about them in quite a supportive manner. And I felt that I couldn't continue working for them under that sort of regime. And so I quit as I did. I can't say it was a completely bad 2 years. You know, it's a lot of free booze and a lot of parties, and I must have gone on 5 or 6 free holidays during my 2 years. It's sort of a culture where you get a lot of free stuff, and certainly for me, it was quite enchanting. I enjoyed mixing with celebrities and all of the things that went with it. And I suppose that I put aside the bad parts of the job, making up stories about Muslims and things like that, in order to allow myself to enjoy that lifestyle up to a certain point. My main reason for quitting was the Islamophobia. That was the real sort of quitting point for me. Although since I've left, I often get asked to sort of talk about showbiz and celebrity and that sort of, you know, the fabrication that occurs there. It's not really my massive gripe, because fabrication in showbiz journalism is endemic. It always has been. That's kind of how it works a lot of the time, because a lot of these celebrities are in on it. A lot of the time they're setting up their own photos. You know, you see them on the beach on the Daily Mail website. They know photographers are there. It's all been set up. They're getting a cut of the profits. It really is a big circle jerk, a better way of putting it. So, you know, although it doesn't really interest me as a person, that sort of, you know, news, I don't really see there's any harm in it in itself. If people want to read that, you know, you can't. You know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So I am going to talk a little bit about, you know, my take on the Islamophobia. That is not just at the Daily Star; it's endemic throughout the right-wing press. But I'm going to focus here mainly on the tabloid press, in particular the Daily Star. But let's not just think this is a Daily Star issue. This occurs throughout the right-wing tabloids, particularly the Daily Express, particularly the Daily Mail as well, which often feed the stories which appear in the Daily Star. A lot of the time, the stories which you see in the Daily Star will have been ripped off from the Daily Mail or the Daily Express the day before. So, you know, some people don't think they are tabloids. I'm sure most of you realise that the Daily Mail and the Express are definitely tabloids. Oh. Better mic? Oh, okay, can you hear me now? There we go, that's better. This is none of my technology here, you see, so if it all buggers up, let me know. Oh, there we go. Can we all see that? I'm going to run through a few of the stories which really made me cringe when I was at... Is that too loud? Yeah. That over here? That better? Okay. I'll run through some of the stories that really made me cringe while I was at Daily Star and give you a brief of what was going on behind the scenes. Now, this headline here: Muslim thugs, aged just 12, in knife attack on Brit schoolboy. Horrible, horrible story, were it true. Now, the knife attack was on Facebook. A school peer of this particular lad had said that he would stab him over the fact that he supported the British troops. That was the extent of the knife attack that actually happened, was someone said, "I'll stab you." So there was actually no actual attack at all. The person who did it was also British. They happened to be a Muslim, but they were also British. But I think, for me, the fact that they juxtapose British and Muslim like that you cannot be British if you are a Muslim. You're just a Muslim. That is your identity. And you can be anything else, but you're never British if you're a Muslim. And that happens all the time. it's sort of more of a subliminal sort of racism that always really disturbed me. You'll see it again. Oh, not that one. This is a good one. BBC puts Muslims before you. Now, yet again, Muslims and you. What audience are the Daily Star sort of speaking to here? They're obviously saying that you are obviously not a Muslim if you read the Daily Star, which I think for a national newspaper, this is the 4th best-selling newspaper in the country, that is a front page of their paper. And you know, the story was about the fact that that Mark Thompson, Mark Thomas, Director General BBC, had said, you know, be a little bit careful when making jokes about Muslims because they tend to be a bit more sensitive. Which obviously, you know, doesn't lead to that headline, really, does it? In any way, shape, or form. But that's something that occurs at the Daily Star all the time. Is really overplaying headlines to a ridiculous extent, and it's based on the philosophy that it's not just about the people who buy the paper. It's about the people who might just walk past it and see it. You know, research shows that most people don't read all the stories in the paper. Most people don't make it past the 2nd or 3rd paragraph if they read it at all. So if you just read that headline, you might not even know what the story's about, but it certainly makes an impression in your head. And I think that's quite an insidious sort of force. This was a story that I was involved in that really what was a low point. It was quite widely reported at the time. But we got a story from a local newspaper saying that a shopping centre in Rochdale had installed a squat toilet. In a block of 12, one of them was a squat toilet. And in the morning, we made some calls to Rochdale Council and said to them, look, you know, what's this all about? And they said, look, it's a private shopping centre. They've got 12 toilets. They installed a squat. It's nothing to do with us. But we really wanted to pin it on the idea that the taxpayer were paying for this squat toilet. So we decided to completely ignore the fact that the council had nothing to do with it and it was a private shopping centre and run the story anyway. And so we ended up with this headline. Of all the stories that I've shown you so far, it's the only one that actually any censure came across from the PCC or anything like that, because it was just completely untrue. But that didn't really stop us. Oh, we'll go back one. We're not there yet. Didn't stop us running a story the next day saying that we've managed to block this toilet and it was no longer going to occur. And that was on the front page too. It did cause quite a storm at the time, but yet again, it sort of, to me, was a real low point when we just didn't really care that it was true. It just made a good headline and it fitted into the desired narrative that somehow Muslims were taking over the country and, you know, next thing we know, we're not going to be able to sit on a bloody toilet in a shopping centre. We're going to be sitting in squat loos. It's going to be hosing it down, and, you know, that was the sort of narrative we were trying to create. Now, this next story, this was basically the start of why I quit. We ran this story about how there had been an award ceremony for a soldier who'd returned from Afghanistan, and how Muslims had refused to applaud him. There was 2 Muslims at this ceremony who didn't applaud him. They were from the Respect Party. They just sat down during the ceremony and didn't. But there was dozens of other Muslims who did. But obviously that sort of ruined the story that we wanted to write, which was that Muslims snubbed the British war heroes. So we just ignored that. There's nowhere in that story does it ever mention that there happened to be many other Muslims who did applaud. All it mentions is that 2 didn't, and we ignored the rest. We picked the facts that fitted what we wanted. And it got a huge response from the readers. You see there's a phone poll by the side there. Do you agree with the EDL policies? Now, I don't know if, maybe you can read that a little bit better. But in this story, there are no policies stated whatsoever. There's nothing to do with, what EDL policies are. But we had this phone poll that cost 25p a minute, that we encourage readers to call up and give their opinions, because it's another money-making sort of thing. And we got a huge response. They sell 850,000 copies a day, and we had 2,000 readers call up. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But that's a good response. We've had days when the phone poll gets 8 callers. Literally 8 callers. But that is the next day presented as a percentage of Daily Star readers. So something like 95% of Daily Star readers the next day agreed with the EDL policies, despite the fact that no policies are mentioned and it was only of 2,000 people. So, yet again, for me, I was like, this is veering well into the realm of fantasy. I'll let you read that one sec while I catch up where I am. Now, the stories that I've shown you, I suppose the big issue here is a matter of truth and what consideration as a journalist you give to truth. What is your understanding of the meaning of truth? And I was reading an article a couple of months ago which I thought sort of summed up my mentality working at the Daily Star of just what the truth meant. It's by a philosopher called Julian Begani, and he said, an estate agent may be technically accurate when she describes a property as being 307 metres from the local shop. But it would be more accurate to point out that the direct route is blocked, and so it is half an hour's walk away. For me, that sort of summed up how, as a tabloid journalist, you treat the truth. It's a matter of what can you get away with, rather than what is the honest assessment of this situation. It's a matter of what is, the legalistic sense of truth. What will I not get sued for, over the moral sense of truth, i.e., what is the right description of this event? And I suppose that is why I feel, tabloid journalism has really drifted far, far away from where it should be as a form of journalism. It's not journalism at all in many senses, because it's distorting that truth. All newspapers have a desired narrative, be it The Guardian, be it The Sun, be it any newspaper. And as a reporter, your job is to pick the facts, to pick the true statements which fit within that narrative, and ignore the ones which don't. Now, that's kind of a natural process, but I think that somewhere like The Guardian or other broadsheets will at least pay lip service to the true statements which don't quite fit, but they'll mention them. The tabloids don't really feel any need to do that, where they literally will just present what truths they want and ignore the rest. Because if it ever ends up in court, all they say, did we lie? You show me where we did lie. And in none of these stories that I've shown you, other than the Muslim Lose ones, could anyone do anything about it, because they featured true statements. They ignored a lot of facts, but they didn't lie. And that's the skill, is managing to pick what true statements you want to put in and ignoring the rest. Well, going back to that last story, as I was saying to you, with the poll got a huge response. It was the editor deigned that the next day we must have a good story on the English Defence League. And lo and behold, this appeared. Now, I didn't write this, but I sat next to the reporter who did, and he's a good reporter and a good bloke. But he was told to call up Tommy Robertson, the leader of the EDL, and to ask him, are they to become a political party? Do they want to become a political party? Which he did, and Tommy Robertson said, no interest in that. We're just a one-issue group. We just want to ban the Quran. You know, that was their issue. That is not the basis of a political party. And he told this to his superiors, and they turned around and said, well, write anyway. And it ended up in this story. And this was the day that I decided I'm going to quit. Because for me, to be giving this sort of publicity to the English Defence League on the front page of your paper... Oh.
Can't hear you at the back.
Oh, can I not? Oh. X Factor's next week.
Would you want it?
Hello? That's much better, yeah. Where were we? He was being told to write this story anyway. And the other part of this was that the language that we'd always associated with the English Defence League, which was right-wing extremists, which was ex-football hooligans, they were the sort of predicates that we put before mentioning them. They were told to be lost. Just to mention the EDL as if you mentioned the Liberal Democrats, you know, just as any other party. And for me, that was a real sort of, we're legitimising these people, and that's not okay. This was the editorial which accompanied that front page. And I'll take a moment to read it, because for me, this felt very much like a tacit support of the English Defence League. It's certainly not a condemnation in any way. Now, I've been to numerous EDL rallies in my time as a reporter at the Daily Star, and I absolutely hated it because they treat you like you're like the prince has arrived in town, because they basically consider the Daily Star to be their newspaper. You know, they literally try and pick you up and hold you aloft and sort of, you know, carry you around or parade their one Muslim sort of member in front of you to get some quote. They do have a Muslim member, funny enough. I don't know why. They do have one Muslim member who's from Glasgow. And they like to parade him. Wherever they can, he goes, and they sort of show him off as why they're not racist. But certainly, this for me was you know, a step too far, and you know, I decided to quit. Now, the Daily Star, yes, it does sometimes just create stories like that I've explained to you, but quite often or not, it just rips stories off other people. Plagiarism, and there's this Jonathan Hari stuff's been kicking off, and plagiarising other people's work. To be honest, to most journalists, it's kind of a little bit of a storm in a teacup, because we're always plagiarising each other's work all the time without any credit, and it's just how it works. So we always nick each other's stuff. And for the Daily Star, this was particularly off the Daily Mail. Their website was pretty much set our editorial agenda. Whatever they wrote, we would stick it in the paper because it was there and it was free, and it was cheap. It was better than cheap, it was free, because you didn't have to send a reporter to go and do the story. Let the Daily Mail send their reporters, and we'll just copy it. So this next story is an example of pretty much a Daily Mail story, and how this is really problematic, sort of copying stories. This is the Daily Star version, and we'd copied this off the Daily Mail, but so I haven't got a copy for you of the Daily Mail, but the Daily Mail one was slightly less aggressive, shall we say, than this particular one. But at the same time, it contained a lot of inaccuracy. They'd already spun this particular situation to the extent that it could possibly be, but we sort of reset that and spun it again. So if you read that story, then I'll tell you exactly what was said by NATO's General Secretary Anders Fogh Rasmussen. This is what he said, which led to this story, and see if it bears any relation whatsoever. Instability in the Middle East may in the longer term have a negative impact on the economy, which might lead to illegal immigration in Europe, but I do not consider this a threat to NATO. There's no mention of Britain, there's no mention of Egyptians, there's no mention of benefits, there's no mention of anything that's in there. Everything is made up off of that statement. That was the original statement. And this is how the problem with churnalism, as it tends to be called, is that every new reporter who puts his hands on it adds a bit of spin. So the Daily Mail may have got that off a stringer who put a bit of spin on it to make it exciting, who then put their own spin on it, and by the time it ends up in the claws of the Daily Star, it bears no relation to anything. Are NATO going to complain? They've probably got bigger things to worry about. But it's certainly, I don't think that it's something that we should accept, that you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to just completely make things up. It's not good journalism. It's not journalism at all. Oh, we'll get to him. Now, this all might seem a little bit sort of tertiary compared to what's been going on with tabloid newspapers over the last couple of months, and certainly when we get to questions, I'm happy to discuss all of my knowledge about that, etc. But I really do think it's on the same scale, and it's these little allowances that as a society we've allowed, this sort of allowance of these untruths to go unchecked, this slow moral decay it's only a little lie, it's only a little lie. It allowed the wound to fester. It allowed journalists to think we can get away with more and more and more, that no one is looking over what we're doing. And that's exactly what led, for me, to people going, why not hack someone's phone? Why not bribe a copper? Because none of these stories I've shown you, there's no consequence. You do get a bit of a God complex, that you can just write what you want and nothing's going to happen. And I think that the two are directly related. I'd put a lot of blame for that on the PCC. They are completely gutless. Working at the Daily Star, they were a joke. There was absolutely nothing that they could do. I have fallen foul of them before, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. And you didn't care. You got a PCC letter through, you threw it away. And I think that really, if you look at it objectively, and it was quite well regarded in the industry, that the PCC pretended to be there to protect the public, but really what it was a pressure group. It was there in order to stave off regulation of the industry. It was there to convince the public, we're protecting you, when in fact, behind the scenes, newspapers are doing whatever the hell they want. Part of the problem is that the PCC won't process complaints from unaffected parties, as they call them, third parties. They won't, so say you're a Muslim and you say, well, hang on, I'm offended by any of those stories that I showed you. They'd tell you, we can't help you. If you're just a general member of the public who say, this isn't true and I'm offended by it, they can't help you. You must be directly involved. You must be named in the story in order to have any sort of recourse. And I think that's been a real problem over the years and why it's sort of spiraled out of control. But it's not always groups, sections of society which have been targeted. It's individuals as well. And you know what's coming next. Chris Jeffries, he got absolutely monstered. Chris Jeffries, he was implicated in the Joanna Yates murders in Bristol, and it was one of those crimes which really gets the tabloid salivating. It's an attractive white female murdered in mysterious circumstances. We need answers right now, that we go all over it. All resources are sent and it becomes a real sort of, we must get the next scoop on this. And Chris Jeffries fitted the bill. He looked a little bit odd and we thought, hey, he'll be a good target. Let's pin the blame on him. And the PCC did warn all the newspapers officially not to print anything about this man because he hadn't been charged with anything, but it got completely ignored. This was one story, you find it here, in The Sun, described a man who'd been arrested, released without charge. They described him in one article as weird, lewd, strange, creepy, angry, odd, disturbing, eccentric, a loner, and unusual. That's one article. This man's not been charged with anything. Now, we know now that he's gone to court and he has got some damages, but he's had to sell his house and move out of Bristol because once the smear's out there, it follows you around. The damage is done. And obviously it's very difficult to regulate the industry in a way that it sort of acts before the fact. But there really is no concern in newsrooms for the effect that stories have on the individuals who fall under their radar. And I think that is a real issue. I mean, the man's life's pretty much been ruined. He was a really lucky one because he had a real slam dunk of a case. And he was able to get a conditional fee agreement, which is a no-win, no-fee, from a very good lawyer who said that they'd pursue that and get damages for him. For most people, they can't get that. It's just not a possibility. Libel cases are very, very complicated and very, very expensive. Unless you have a real solid case, you have to front the money yourself. I think that for most people, if you're presented with a scenario, we go to court and you win, you get some money. You lose, you go bankrupt. You lose your house, you lose everything you work for. You're probably going to drop the case. And newspapers know that. That's why they're happy to sort of smear people like this, because they know the likelihood of them actually pursuing to court a case is minuscule. And that's a real sort of created a real vacuum in the access to justice. It could happen to anyone in this room. You don't know in what twist of fate you may end up being in the sniper scope of a tabloid newspaper, but anyone can get mauled. You never expect it coming. And trust me, you'd find yourself in a real position where you wouldn't have much you could do about it. You would be buggered. There's been a long-standing sort of argument that whenever, I suppose The Guardian would be the newspaper that's sort of been at the forefront of sort of criticising tabloid behaviour. And there's been a long-standing sort of argument from tabloid type saying, how dare sort of these liberal flip-flop wearing metropolitan elites sort of patronise the working classes by telling them what they should and shouldn't read and what they deserve. And that was an argument I heard all the time. And it's just an argument that really doesn't stand up whatsoever. Because tabloids prefer, if they have any choice over the matter, to target working class poor people for their stories. Because they don't know what the hell to do and they get exploited, they're easily manipulated to do what you want, and you know, I've been in enough people's council houses in my time, convincing them to do some shoot about the fact that they're a grandparent at 29, that I know is not going to do their life any good. And the 500 quid that I'm offering them is going to run out in about 2 days, and then they're going to be known as those people. To know that very much working class people, who they claim as newspapers to represent, are the ones most exploited by tabloid practices. On top of that, there's for a long time been petitions going on behind the scenes by newspapers to try and get rid of conditional fee agreements, which are a no-win, no-fee in the cases of libel. They hate it. They absolutely hate the fact that, however little recourse it is, they hate the fact that people have got any recourse to what they want to write. How dare they step in the way of our, you know, ability to write our stories and fill our pages? And they're getting their wish at the moment, because with the huge cuts to the legal aid bill and the huge cuts to the Justice Department, there are reforms going through called the Jackson reforms, which are pretty much going to mean that lawyers won't be able to do no-win, no-fee in the cases of libel, because it's going to slash their win bonus, as it's called. It's normally 100%, which means it's worth the gamble taking on a case, because if you win, you get a 100% bonus. They're going to slash out to 25%, which is just not worth them taking the risk on someone who can't afford to pay up front, which really is going to mean the only people who can ever seek justice and recourse at a newspaper are going to be the rich. So really, going back to my argument that is always propagated, that, you know, the broadsheets, how dare they patronise the working class or tell them what they should read, it's really the tabloids who are betraying them by trying to do them out of any access to justice and spoon-feeding them shit every day and then ask them to say thank you for it. That's my opinion on the matter. When it comes to tabloids, obviously you've got a lot less space, but I don't think that that's an excuse for the fact that very nuanced issues really are sort of reduced to the most simplistic narrative. You know, global warming's a myth, Muslims are terrorists, drugs are bad. That is very much how tabloids operate. Everything is polarised one way or the other. And it's really frustrating as a journalist to be writing it, because you know you're sitting there with a big report in front of you and you know there are different aspects to this, but you've only got 250 words to write it in. And you know that if you can't indulge the idea that, you know, there's a study done that says cannabis is less harmful than alcohol. Well, you know you're going to have to take the one line out of that, which says, but in 10% of cases, you know, someone died smoking cannabis, and you're going to have to make that the top line. And that's a real issue. It's not the journalist's fault, as much as they've got a lot of bad press of late, journalists themselves, and there are bad apples, but working in a newsroom, you don't really have the power or the option to start deciding what you're going to write and what you're not going to write. You're told what the angle of the story is. Often before the story's even been seen, it's been decided. Before the facts are known, what story is going to end up on the page is already decided. You just have to find the facts to fit that particular story. And I guess that's something that is hard to explain to people who aren't journalists, quite how that works. But you will go through maybe a 20-page report and you will just find the 2 or 3 lines which will fit that. And it doesn't feel particularly good doing it, but you have to fit within the narrative of the newspaper. And unfortunately, that narrative tends to be, for many of the tabloids, right-wing and very xenophobic. Now, I suppose you can sort of divide the population up at the moment into 2 types. You've got the people who believe what they read in newspapers and the people who don't believe what they read in newspapers. It's a broad sort of division, but indulge me. Now, the people who believe what they read in newspapers. Now, imagine that the only newspaper that you read, the only source of news you had, was the Daily Star or the Daily Express. And that was the only source of news. And that might seem to you guys, well, you probably get your news sources from various places. You get a balanced perspective. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people, market research shows that people don't. They will read every day their same newspaper. What sort of worldview do you have? What sort of, what is your take on the world? And I suppose when you're sitting in a newsroom, and as a journalist, you lose perspective of that, of the end product and where it goes. You only think about the fact that you've read 10 different articles and you know what the truth is, and you're just doing what you need to do to get down the pub at the end of the day. But there's someone out there who that's all they read. And if they read that all the toilets are going to be Muslim only, and that, immigrants are flooding through the country, they may one day decide to go and pick up a brick and throw it through a mosque window. Or worse, like in Norway, they read some of the hateful things in newspapers and try to do something about it and go on a shooting spree. That sounds extreme, but I don't think that we are that far away in this country from something similar happening. The guy himself, he quoted Daily Mail columnists in his manifesto. These things have an impact. The butterfly effect, that small things can have big consequences. And I think if we keep propagating this really right-wing agenda of pretty much fitting any story into it, disregarding any truths that don't fit it, really create an issue. And I think we may regret it. Now, for me, something needs to change. We are going through change at the moment. Something needs to pop out the other end. And I really hope, and I'm involved personally in sort of the process of discussing it with various groups to try and work out a new system which may better allow us journalists, as journalists, to be better journalists, to allow us that freedom to report fairly and accurately. I think that we need to have a lot more power to financially punish newspapers. That's what's lacking. Because newspapers are businesses, like any other business. Once upon a time, they were just owned by people who had money, who liked the power. But now they're just run like any other business, and that is you appeal to the mass market. You appeal to whatever you think will sell, with no regard for the public interest and no regard for the truth. And that's a fact. That was very much the culture at the Daily Star. We appeal to whatever will sell. Today's front page of the Daily Star was Will and Kate enter the Big Brother house. And they mocked up some photos of some lookalikes in the Big Brother house inside. And 3/4 of the way down, they put a line saying, "These are only lookalikes." But they know that a lot of people will buy the paper just thinking that's true. That's not journalism, but it sells, so who cares? That's the culture that's been allowed to fester in this country. And that needs to change. I think that if you start hitting newspapers in the pocket, if they lie, if they deceive their readers, they get hit by heavy penalties. Then that will start changing the culture. It will take away the idea that your editorial agenda is merely weighing up the readers you're going to put on versus the liability that you might have from a lawsuit. And that's pretty much what it is. If we write this about this person, they might get 50k. But if we put on 100,000 readers, sod it. There's no human aspect. And I think that the only way is to speak their language, and that's hit them in the pocket. I don't like the idea of statutory control. I don't like the idea that the government has a say in the regulation of the press. But in the current situation, you've got Richard Desmond, doesn't even take part. He's just opted out. And there's no way to force someone like Richard Desmond back into the fold unless you compel them through law. You can't have any sort of regulation that is completely voluntary anymore. Those days are gone. It doesn't work. Because otherwise it will just be ignored, as it has up to now. And that can't happen. I think on top of that, the general public needs to take responsibility. Because the best-selling newspapers are the tabloids. People buy it. And with newspapers being businesses, if I was setting up a newspaper tomorrow for profit, would I set up The Guardian, a copy of The Guardian, or would I set up a copy of the Daily Star? What would the Daily Star, probably, if I was looking to make money? Because that's what people buy. I think there's been a lot of hypocrisy in public outrage over phone hacking and things like that. Because for a long time now, it's been known that celebrities' phones were hacked. And no one really cares. I'm like, so that's just a game. It's only when the likes of Millie Dowler got hacked that anyone went, oh no, this is awful, and started getting angry about it. That doesn't make any sense, because on an ethical level, ethics don't make allowances for your wealth or fame. You either can't hack phones or you can hack phones. I think that the general public, the only way that they can, if they really care about the press, is to start speaking with their wallets and to start asking questions about where the stories in their papers come from, and when they see inaccuracies, to stop buying them. But the big problem is that I do quite a few talks and I take part in debates, and there's many people who are sort of in this field sort of trying to reform the press, but often you feel like you're talking to yourself a little bit, because the people who really need to know about this stuff are the last people to hear about it. The people who buy the Daily Star aren't the people coming here tonight. And that's the real problem that I think needs to be overcome, is how do you get to the mass market, to the mass population, the 5 or 6 million people a day who buy tabloids and get their news primarily from tabloids. How do you get across to them that what you're reading is not a fair reflection of the world? That these newspapers are not acting in your interest, they're acting against your interest. And stop buying them until they clean up their act. I'm not sure of that question, but it's a question worth asking, and it's a question worth trying to solve. So I'll leave it at that for now. And I think someone's coming up with a... there you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Peppiatt. Okay, right, where's Adge? Adge, hello. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Adge. Adge, please hold aloft the glass in your hand. Adge has an empty glass, not full glass. Adge has an empty glass. Into this empty glass goes 5 new British pounds. I would like to see that glass full of money by the end of the evening. If you've enjoyed the talk this evening, fill the glass with money. If you haven't enjoyed the talk this evening, fill it with money anyway, because it's going to be brilliant. Where's Marsh? Marsh also has a glass. Please fill Marsh's glass with money. Oh, Siobhan joining in with us as well. Siobhan. Hello, Siobhan. Siobhan seems to already have money, which is cheating. Oh, it's your money. Right, I see. Please fill Siobhan's glass with money. And we're going to take a short break now. There are 3 sandwiches supplied by our host, the head of steam, who are quite fantastic. Round of applause to the head of steam, please. 3 sandwiches on the bar. Go on, help yourself. We're going to be back in about half an hour for questions. Off you go. Try. Fantastic. Right. Hello again. God, nobody's paying attention. Hello again. Marvellous stuff. Okay. Does everyone have a nice break? Indulged in 3 sandwiches and all that sort of business? Have you had a good time? Yeah? No? Nobody's had the line? Nobody gets a fuck today. Okay, fine. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Marshall there. Hands up, Mr. Marshall. Marsh has the roving microphone. If you've got a question, hands in the air, Marsh will come and get to you in the fullness of time. But in the meantime, big round of applause, please, for questions from Richard Peppiatt.
Excellent, excellent. Well, here I am. I'm on the microphone knocking around. If anyone's got a question you want to ask Rich, you put your hands nice and high in the air, and I'm going to be wandering around making sure that I can catch you and ask questions. So I've got one here and one there, but my hands nice and high in the air. Richard's going to answer questions about all sorts of stuff, I'm sure. So I've got the back of the room first. Please say your name.
I love this bit the most. Interesting questions.
Say your name and any question, please.
Hi, my name's Dave Collins. Question I've got for you is, you made a good case for strengthening libel to protect people like Chris Jeffries. I'm just wondering, we've had Simon Singh here in the past making the case for the opposite, libel reform, to prevent people like him from being sued by the promoters of bogus medicine. How do you think it's possible to strike a balance between the two?
Well, I mean, personally, I think the balance is something that I've been in the process of setting up with a couple of unnamed current donors who I can't mention, but wealthy people who are prepared to set up a fund that will sit there in the middle of basically this particular situation and will provide money to worthy cases who need money to pursue legitimate cases against newspapers, but at the same time it would be there for, say, a website which gave a bad review of a drug and is getting bullied by a big pharmaceutical company. On either side it's bullying. This is what it is. It's bullying from newspapers of little people who say, that was wrong, that's not fair, and they get bullied by newspapers. And equally, I understand the argument that there are people who say a criticism of a company and they get bullied into taking it down when they shouldn't do. I faced it myself. I've criticised newspapers and I've been, they've tried bullying me into shutting up. And the Daily Star being one of them. But, I think that there can be a balance struck. But I do think that the way that the government's going at the moment with the Jackson proposals is not the way forward at all. And I don't know Simon Singh's argument through and through, but I stand by what I say, that it needs to be stronger than it is.
Hi Rich, you said that working for the Daily Star was a betrayal of political opinions. How far does this extend in the rest of the organisation? Was the editor betraying his political opinions as well, and how did they reconcile this, morally?
Well, first of all, betrayal of my political opinions, I suppose yes, but I never wanted to bring my political opinions first into it. I really wanted to sort of keep that out, because that as a journalist, it was my responsibility not to bring my opinion into what I was doing. That came to the point where I thought, actually, I have to intervene with my own opinion, because this is not just being unbiased and being a journalist, this is actually basically feeding propaganda. That was how I felt. It extended very far up the line. I was only a reporter, so I wasn't involved in every meeting that happened. But certainly the editor was known to be quite right-wing. This means nothing, I'm not implying anything by this because I'm being filmed, but she was a West Ham season ticket holder and was well known for her right-leaning tendencies. And Richard Desmond is also, he's very right-leaning. And this has always been more a rumour, but this is nothing sort of connecting Judaism to this, but he is Jewish and he's very involved in Jewish charities. And there was always a rumour that went round that there was a Zionistic sort of tendency to his politics. The Muslim thing came from his Judaism. As I said, that was just a rumour, but there was a connection between the fact that his newspapers were very, very Islamophobic, was connected to his strong Judaistic beliefs. As I said, that is no evidence for that. That was just what was, rumoured frequently to be occurring.
Do you have any Jewish West Ham fans in the audience? Thank God for that.
I read your resignation letter in The Guardian in March, and I reread it tonight before I came out. I noticed tonight that there was a statement from the Daily Star at the end of it, where they, far be it from me to defend the Daily Star, but they presented you as a disgruntled former casual employee, someone who had been passed over for promotion many times, and they said that, I think the example you gave in your resignation letter, the story that you were forced to make up, they said that you offered to them and maintained its accuracy. So I was hoping that you could sort of give a rebuttal to their rebuttal. But at the same time, I did want to say that I think you did sum up in your resignation letter quite well the problem with this whole trade when you talk. The example you gave was a famous saying, what a contract swings in Brazil and causes a tornado in Texas. You said that similarly in this case that a tabloid journalist sat at his desk in Wapping causes someone to get their head caved in Bradford. So that's my views.
Right, you remembered it better than I did.
Well, I think that sums up the whole sort of horrible business. But I did want to hear your views on the Daily Star rebuttal.
Yeah, when I did what I did, I didn't expect to take it lying down. Mainly, it's not really their style. So I expected a response, and they did. It was a pathetic response. It's not true, any of it. I mean, they're true in the fact that I was a casual reporter, but then every member of staff, pretty much there was a casual reporter, in that their contracts were almost a week-by-week basis, in that was how they didn't have to give any pension, they didn't have to give any benefits, any holiday. That was how they employed people. I worked there for 2.5 years, solidly, for 50 weeks a year with 2 weeks off. So yes, they're right to say I was a casual employee, but so was everyone else there. So they're sort of playing with semantics a little bit. They accused me of being warned about making up quotes, and that's true as well. I did get warned. I got told to make up better quotes. What else did they say? Sorry, I didn't pay much attention. Yes, no, well, they accused that I brought that story too. Let me tell you the story of that. It was a Sunday in, God knows what month. And it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, which is the time we sort of go home. And the news editor of the day, who I won't name, I'm desperately trying not to name anyone because I don't really want to implicate anyone else. I'm a little bit of nicety there, but I'd love to if I don't like him. He came over to the news reporters and said, we need a page 3 story. Now, I know most of you don't read Daily Star, but in tabloids, page 3 stories goes alongside the tits. Squeezed inside there. It's a particular type of story that tends to be quite funny, humorous. There's nothing, we've got absolutely nothing. If you want to go home, come up with one. Come on, give us a story. I don't care where it comes from, bloody make it up, whatever. 150 quid. Whoever comes up with the first one. So I'll make that up. Kelly Brook was seeing a hypnotist to cure her inability to get ready quickly. So I just made it up. And I told him straight away that I've come up with this idea. Because Kelly Brook's not the sort of woman who's going to sue. She likes any publicity. You know, it's not the sort of story that someone would sue over. It's fairly safe. It's not detrimental to their career or their reputation. So I thought that's a safe story. And he went, yes, 150 quid to you. And they paid me 150 quid bonus. So I made 300 quid that day. So I was quite happy going. You know, for them to claim that they pay bonuses to reporters for coming up with stories normally is rubbish, because they'd be paying reporters 450 quid a day. I mean, I've gone in there and come up with 8 stories in a day. I'd be on like, 100 grand a year at that rate. And they gave money, it's just, that was a one-off that he gave a bet who come up with the story. And you know, I've never bothered to respond to what they've said. I mean, you know, I put up online my business card from the Daily Star with my name, and I'm a reporter. I got sent away on foreign jobs frequently. I've flown to Los Angeles, I've flown to all over the world with the Daily Star. So if I was just a casual reporter who had no significance there, they wouldn't happen. I don't feel the need to respond to it. Reporters in the industry know that I was a senior reporter there. You know, I didn't expect them to take it lying down, but I think that they haven't got much on me.
Okay, I've got a question here, but hands nice and high in the air. I've got one here and then one towards the back. So if I can ask a couple of other questions, one towards the back, that'd be good, because I can't be asked to walk far without many questions resulting from it. But here first.
Okay.
Wait, where are you? Oh, there you are, there you are.
Alright, do you think this kind of profit-driven attitude to journalism is something that's only come about in the last couple of decades, or do you think it's been around since, like, you know, the 1960s, 70s, when journalists like Robert Fisk were on the job?
I think that it's certainly something that's come along in the last few decades a lot more. I don't think it's never been there, but certainly if you look back to the 60s and before that, Fleet Street was famous for it was owned by proprietors who basically had it for power, not money. The newspapers lost, ridiculous amounts of money, but the power that you had from that newspaper made it worthwhile. I think with the advent of the likes of Richard Desmond, it's been a real insidious force on national newspapers, because he's not a newspaper man. Rupert Murdoch, for all of his faults, is a newspaper man. He cares about journalism. And for all of his faults, the man knows journalism. And in some ways, he saved journalism in this country, in that he invested a lot of money in keeping it afloat. And he's gone wayward since then. But the man invested a lot in journalism in this country. Richard Desmond's invested shit. Richard Desmond has just taken up journalism as any other business, which is strip it down to its bare bones and try and drain it for everything that it's worth. I've been in the Daily Star newsroom, and there has been 3 reporters to put out a national newspaper. I've written maybe 12 stories in a day. I've written so many stories, I've had to make up names to put next to those stories, just to make it seem there wasn't 3 reporters in there. Now, what national newspaper are you putting out that has any validity? How am I supposed to check when I'm in for 9-10 hours and I'm making 12 stories? I'm just going like that and I'm not checking anything. And that is the version of journalism that he sees, churnalism. Get people in to rewrite shit and send it out, put it in the paper, charge 20p, and he makes some money. And I think that, you know, that is the real insidious force, is people like him who just want to make it into a business. It's not a normal business. It doesn't sit naturally with a capitalist business model, because it's not a normal business. It has a public interest. It has a responsibility attached to it, to the public. You know, as part of a democracy, a press is vital. So I think that you can't just treat it like a used car firm. And I think that's what it's being treated like at the moment.
I think I'm next. I've got the mic, so I must be next. I'd like to give you a bit of a bad time. I want to put you in the dock.
That's all right.
I'm not convinced that you're fully repentant about what you've done, really. The first point that I'd like to make is that you weren't actually an employee of the start. Is that what you're saying? You were just employed week to week. So making a big resignation letter you weren't actually resigning from the job. Is that correct or not?
No, not really. I mean, 80% of the reporters there, they're casual reporters. You could say I was a week-to-week employee, but I worked there for 150 weeks, you know, with a week off somewhere in between there. So I don't see any differential between the fact that I had a contract or the fact that I was a casual. Richard Desmond does not want to put people on contracts because they have to pay pensions and benefits. That's just his business model. All of the sub-editors, the backbench, they're all on week-by-week contracts. Doesn't mean that I don't expect to get work the next week, because I know I'm going to get work. My rota says I've got, you know, I'm working till God knows when. It lasts half the year. But at the same time, technically, they could tell me at any point to go. But that's just it's a technicality. It was never going to happen.
Okay, well, just keeping in the dock for a moment.
No.
When you started work with the start, how old were you? Can I ask that?
23.
Okay, that's quite young. I'll excuse you for that. Had you been any older, I would have thought you must have known what the daily star was like, and you were getting involved. But 23 is acceptable.
No, it's not. No, it's not acceptable. Don't let me out of the dock that easy. No, I'll remain in the dock if you don't mind. No, it's not. And you know, there has been people who've tried casting me as some sort of bloody hero for what I've done, and I'm certainly not, because I spent 2 years, more than 2 years. I took the job knowing that it was a right-wing paper, of which is not my politics, and I decided to overlook that because it was offering me over 30 grand a year and I was in debt and I needed some money. I decided to put that aside. I then, for 2 years, did things which I'm deeply ashamed of. I went out for the day dressed in a burqa, in order to write a feature about what it's like beneath the veil. In which the police turned up because the public was so disturbed by this sort of, you know, 6-foot man wandering around the streets with his feet sticking out the bottom in a pair of flip-flops in the city of London. Deeply ashamed of that. You know, I've got, there's no excuse, but I literally just said, if I don't do it, someone else will. Why should I be the martyr? Why should I be the one who makes a stand when I just get someone else and fill my seat tomorrow? Nothing changes by me saying no. And what am I? I've trained as a journalist. I've become a journalist. I've made it to Fleet Street. I'm not in a position to start picking and choosing what I'm going to do. You say no once, you're gone. That's why the contract works. That's why the week-by-week contract works. Because at any time that I said no, I'm gone. They get someone new in. So I said yes. You know what I mean? And there's no excuse for that, but that was what I did until I hit my breaking point and I, didn't.
Okay. So you did hit the breaking point. And do you now intend to return to journalism, and if so, in what capacity?
You never leave. You know, once you're a journalist, you're always a journalist. You always got your eye out for a story, and I've been writing ever since I resigned. You know, I now write for more like The Guardian and The Indie, and yeah, I've sort of carved out, I suppose, to some degree, a niche in that I'm a former tabloid reporter who can write with authority about life as a tabloid, in tabloids. But that was very much a sort of a unintended consequence. When I quit, I didn't know what was going to happen. As far as I was concerned, I was pretty much throwing my career away, and that no newspaper was going to touch me with a barge pole because I couldn't be trusted because I'd blown the whistle. That hasn't been the case, and I've got a lot of support from a lot of journalists throughout the industry who have said, if anything I can do to give you work, because I'm not the only one. Like, journalists working in tabloids now, I would say 80% of them feel exactly the same way as I feel. I know that because I've had emails from them, I've had drinks with them. The journalists themselves tend to be highly educated, liberal people who happen to have fallen into a job which doesn't reflect their own values, but they find it hard to escape. Because there's not a lot of journalism jobs about. We can't all work for the fucking Guardian. You know what I mean? Like, it's no, you know, the Guardian makes a loss every year. The Sun makes a profit. You know, that's where the jobs are, is at the right-wing press. The Mail has a graduate training scheme. The Guardian doesn't have one. This is where journalists end up. This is the industry. They end up doing things they don't like. But what are they going to do about it? And you know, I spoke out. You know, I did what I did. But certainly I'm not alone. And this is the sad thing about it. You've got journalists, talented people writing this stuff they don't believe in for people up above who are making a lot of money off making them do it. And I think that's, you know, that's sad.
Okay. Well, I haven't got the mic anymore.
I have. You've answered a bit.
Oh, there you are, there you are.
But, I'm just wondering at what point did it dawn on you that you were going to expose what was going on? You know, and did anybody, I mean, was it just like you had a breaking point and it was a snap thing, it's like, right, I've had, you know, an idea and now I'm going to do this? Or was it a slow burn and did nobody, because you've seen some of what comes across things a little bit like, and I work in the media and I was back in 150% of the casualisation of the workplace, you know, that is equivalent to what most professions would consider a standard job. But did they not smell a rat, basically, you know?
No, I mean, I've been unhappy at the Daily Star for probably about 6 months. When I say unhappy, I've been really in a decline of that. I personally was really quite depressed, really. I mean, I was drinking too much and I was quite unhappy about what was going on. But I didn't really know how to confront it. I suppose that my solution to the fact I didn't like what I was doing was to drink and to basically ignore the fact. And it came to a point, I suppose, in February this year when really it started, as I saw it, the sort of, it wasn't just the showbiz journalism that was all rubbish, it was now becoming the politics they were quite prepared to just make up. And for me, yeah, it was a slow burn, but there was a breaking point. You know, when the EDL stuff started, that was for me when I decided I'm leaving. But I decided I was leaving, but then I had this idea that maybe the best way to combat their sensationalism was a bit of your own sensationalism. You know what I mean? That maybe if you resign, well, nothing's going to happen. You know what I mean? They don't care. They're just going to go, all right, see you later, next. So what can you do to change that? You know, is there anything that you can do to change that? And I decided, well, maybe I'll resign publicly And I went, that's stupid. Who's going to do that? But it kept bugging me. Then I sort of thought, maybe there's something in that. And it sort of loitered for a couple of weeks. And then I knew someone at The Guardian, friend of a friend, and I said, look, let's have a cup of coffee, and we talked about it. And I sort of said to him, look, if I was to send you my resignation letter, would you consider publishing it? So he went back to his editors and said they would be really bloody interested, yes. And I hadn't put pen to paper at all at this point. So I was like, well, that's the start, because there's no point resigning publicly if no one bloody gives a toss if you're resigning. So, well, someone cares if I'm resigning publicly. So, all right. So I started writing it, and it took me a couple of weeks of sort of doodling away and thinking, what do I want to say here? And then I set the date that I said March the 1st. That's going to be the date you resign, because that's the date you get paid. Make sure you get your last month's wages, because the first thing, knowing how tight they are, is they're going to block your wages coming through. So I thought, you need that money, and I had some expenses coming through, so I thought, 1st of March, that's the day. So it was pretty much, I sort of wrote the letter, and it was all arranged that on the 1st of the month, I hit the button in the morning, they got the letter, published it, they went to the Daily Star for comment, and that was it. Unfortunately, Rupert Murdoch decided to launch a bid for B Sky B about 10 seconds after I hit the button. So it went, I was like, oh no, because then they went, look, we can't publish it because all the media pages are full up with this Murdoch stuff. It's just, so I'm trying to screw over one media mogul and I've got done over by another one. So I was like, oh, it's just my luck. So right, okay, so we will get round to it. So I spent this agonising week where the Daily Star had seen my letter and were obviously calling me round off the hook. I never answered the phone. I just ignored it. But I got a few emails sort of saying, "Don't do this, pull out." Eventually, this was the Monday, and then come the Friday, they have finally agreed to publish it. And it was the worst week of my life. It was definitely, because I just sat there thinking, I've given up my whole career. And The Guardian are just going to get bored of it because it's been sitting there for so long, I'm not even going to bother publishing it anyway, and no one's going to read it, and I've resigned in such a public manner for nothing. And it's going to have no effect. Not that I wouldn't have resigned anyway, but it was just the way that I did it, it was going to go round the whole of Fleet Street anyway, what I tried to do. And it was going to be embarrassing, you know what I mean, that he tried to do this and it failed. So it was hard, and that relief, when they called me and said, we're putting it online in about an hour, I can't describe it. It was like, right, we're off now. And yeah, that was, here I am.
Excellent. Here I am at the back of the room. We've got a question here. But before we go to it, does anyone else have a question? Because they'll be coming to a close soon. There's one near the front, so we'll head back that way. But here first.
Thank you. So I was going to ask about journalists in general, in tabloids kind of selling out and stuff, but I think you answered that saying that 80% of them are happy and they're just doing it to make a buck, I guess. So I've got another couple of questions, just one general, one more specific. So generally, why don't you think there are any left-wing tabloids? And secondly, more specifically about the EDL story. So why do you think the Star jumped on the EDL and didn't jump generally on BNP policy, which is pretty similar to those things? And then two comments. One, was it just coincidence that every picture had Jordan on front page? And secondly, there's no way you're 6 foot.
What was the last one?
You're 6 foot.
All right, 5'11" and a half. Jesus, give me a break. Not even in my Tom Cruise heels.
Very quickly, your actual question. Very quickly.
Why aren't there any left-wing tabloids? And secondly, why
technically there is in the Mirror. I mean, you could argue that they're a left-wing tabloid, but I suppose the broader question there is why are we even contemplating the Mirror as being the left-wing tabloid? It's the voices, the voices that we have in national newspapers. Let's exclude the Guardian, and the Indie, let's just say they don't exist. Are so narrow. If you're a tabloid reader, your options are basically there in the middle. There's no voices of anything other than the Mirror's not left-wing, the Mirror's centrist, you know what I mean? All you've got is centre or right. That's all you've got. Because basically, from the national debate, from the newspaper debate, it's excluded any controversial voices on the mass market level. You take things like drugs, you know, there is, I keep bringing it up, you think but every newspaper would come out instantly, like, you know, when David Nutt came up and said, you know, ecstasy is less damaging than alcohol, every tabloid condemned that as the rantings of a madman. Be it the Mirror, or be it the Sun, be it the Daily Star. It's a rantings of a madman, but it's actually the truth, you know what I mean? That was scientific facts that he was just reporting. You know what I mean? So there is no voice that is prepared to step outside of that. So we don't have a left-wing tabloid. We have a centre tabloid, the Mirror, and we have a lot of very right-wing tabloids, and that's an imbalance. Our press industry as a whole is so vastly balanced towards the right wing, it's undemocratic in my opinion. It undermines our democracy because there's so much pressure always pushing things rightward. I don't think it reflects our country, personally.
Do you want to just sort of follow up on why you think that might be? Why is it all right wing or centre, and why is it all left? And also sort of leading into that, why does
because I think that newspapers find it easier to reinforce prejudice than to challenge it. I think that it's an easier buck in your pocket to tell someone something they want to hear. The reason they haven't got a job is because of the immigrant next door. The reason that they can't get a council house is because of the Somalis who just arrived in the country. That's easier to sell than say, well, hang on a second, the facts actually show that, you know, they don't have any benefit from council housing, they get £40 a week, and whatever it may be. It's easier sell, it's easier money in your pocket, and that's where this is where I bring up the subject of it being a business, in that what can we tell people to make them buy the newspaper? I think that perverts true journalism, and the Guardian may make a loss, but I like to think that much of the time, at least it's bloody trying to tell the truth. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if we have to do a whip round in a couple of years and keep it afloat, then God, it's there. You know what I mean? It's sort of newspapers. I don't think that journalism, in its true essence, and maybe I'm being idealistic, it can't have that sort of profit motive being so bearing down on it, because that undermines the objective of journalism, which is to get to the truth. You know. But the EDL thing, I think, was your other question, was why the EDL? Because the Daily Star knows that they're a right-wing newspaper, and it's again, easy buck. You know what I mean? A lot of people who they think read the Daily Star may well support the EDL, even if tacitly will tell them what they want to hear. You know.
Hi, I'm Tom. My question is about the Press Complaints Commission. From what I understand, it's there for self-regulation of the press. Who are the people behind it? Who's at the top of the PCT?
Well, you've got Baroness Buscombe, who's stepping down. You've got, I forget his first name, Mr. Abel, who's the director. But behind all that, you have the press complaints. It's like it's the policy body which decides the policy of the Press Complaints Commission. I think it's called Biscoff or something ridiculous like that. But sitting on that is Paul Dacre, the executive editor of the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail, and many other figures from the industry. And this is what really, I mean, it seems obvious, undermines the legitimacy of the Press Complaints Commission is that most tabloid and newspaper editors are involved in the very body that's supposed to be regulating them. They all sit around the same table. If you turn that around and you had any other body, if you had the IPCC, the police, and you had all the bloody police commissioners from all the different counties sitting around the table deciding on cases for themselves, do you really think that the press would go, well, that sounds fair enough to us, I don't see what the problem is? They'd go, that's ridiculous, it's absolutely ridiculous, of course they would. But this is the problem, is that who's going to report on the press? The press, since 1990 when it was set up, and it was set up with the idea it gets 6 months to prove its effectiveness. 6 months. And it's never proved its effectiveness, but everyone forgot about that. No one's ever reported on them because it's like, well, you know, we control the megaphone. We have our hand on the megaphone, so we don't want to be shouted through it, don't get shouted. So that's why, up to now, until The Guardian has been brave enough to go, this is a ridiculous situation, we are literally regulating ourselves to the worst possible way possible. Have we got to this stage?
And I think the next is another burning. We've got one question at the back, and that'll be the last one. So I'll just rush to the back of the room and see if we can find the question there.
I don't know whether you're an answer to this, but is this kind of the stuff you've been talking about in popular media in the UK, is this prevalent within the rest of Europe as well? Or why, and if it isn't, why is it prevalent in the UK media?
Well, you know, to be honest, I feel slightly unqualified to talk, so I'm not massively aware of exactly what it's like in other countries. I know that we've certainly had the most ravenous press in Europe. If you look at France compared to Britain, say, they could never print the sort of paparazzi pics the Daily Mail features on its website every single day. They just legally couldn't. Frequently, their newspapers or magazines get covered up because, you know, they say, you know, it gets banned after publication for its intrusiveness. I think that most Europeans are shocked by how intrusive our press is. Why is that? I don't know. Why are we more intrusive than anyone else? So why are we more rubbernecking culture? I think that's it though. It's literally, it's a rubbernecking, wanting our, you know, to stick our heads into everyone else's business. And maybe it's somehow a deep sort of disenchantment with their own lives. I can only think that that's it. Like, why people would feel the need to sort of aspire to celebrities to somehow validate their own lives. You know, to me, there's obviously something with our society that we feel the need to make these people role models. But it seems more here than anywhere else. We feel the need to make X Factor and things like that, these sort of people as our role models in life. I don't think it's healthy, I don't think it's good, but certainly the people behind that who make this happen are the newspapers, and it's something in our society I think that, you know, we seriously need to address. And I think that if we look at the riots that have been going on, I think you can directly associate this culture of wealth and fame and attainment. If you're wealthy, you have objects, you have things. Personally, I think that is partly behind why these riots occurred, is because you have an underclass who can't afford these things, and you can't keep shoving it in their face that, you know, people walk around with Gucci handbags and they can't have it. That's just my opinion, but I think that's linked into it. Off the point, but yeah.
Well, I think that's an excellent point to end on. So can everyone give a huge round of applause
Okay, so everyone had a good evening? Yeah. Very much. If you've had a good evening, come and write your name down on the form, and then we can send you an email telling you what else we've got on. No one fills these in. Come and One more thing I want to mention before we finish up. The next event is a social event. That's on September the 1st, and that's going to be in here from 8. Is it? 8. From 8 o'clock. So in here, September the 1st from 8 o'clock. And then on September 15th, we've got Ash Price is going to come down to us with a talk called How to Be a Psychic Con Man, which is going to be very. I've seen the talk before, and it's good. You want to be there. You want to be there for Ash Price, and that's on September 15th, again from 8 o'clock in here. So before we go, another round of applause, please, for Richard Peppiatt. A big round of applause, please, for head of steam of Richard Toast this evening. Thank you to Marsh for being roving mic for us. Give him a round of applause. And that's it. Thanks very much, everybody, and good night.